Hello and welcome to another video on the Emotional Serenity channel. We thank you for being here with us. And just like we mentioned a few topics or assumptions in our past video, today we want to talk about a particular principle that sets the basis for us to move on to the 12-step program. Again, you don't have to agree with the definition that we have of happiness, but it is important that we understand each other. And when we mention happiness or another topic, this is exactly what we mean. So again, today I will be talking about happiness, and it is one of the first and basic assumptions of the program. So what do you think that happiness is? And please, if you need to, just take a moment, think about it, pause the video if you need to. Define what is happiness for you. Are you using a comparison of someone else's status or things they have, or a perception of someone else's happiness to define your own happiness? Are you, like I was a long time ago, basing in the questions of, if I could have such and such thing, or if I could be like such and such person, then it would be a lot easier to be happy? Or are you thinking, if I didn't have this particular constraint, or if I didn't go through, or if I hadn't gone through, then it would be easier for me to be happy or dedicate time to be happy? If you're one of those, let me share just a story that resembles, depicts a little bit the concept of what happiness thing is for us, and sort of what are the misleading assumptions that basing our happiness in perception, or what we perceive from other people, really have, right? Like some of those misleading attributes of perception. And this is a very special story for me. So I think I have already told you that my boy is autistic. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. And it was obviously a very difficult time, but we went through a series of different stages in the grief process, and we'll talk about the cycle of grief in another time. But I remember this particular time because I have been working in 12-hour shifts at a factory, and it was very late at night, and for a while now, every time that I came back from work around 1 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, then I will find my wife waiting for me to get home and put the kid to sleep, because he wasn't going to sleep by himself. So here we were, another 2 o'clock in the morning. I can't exactly recall what was the time, but it was around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just sitting there on my sofa, on my couch, and I'm just looking at this kid, and he's jumping around, and all I can think of is, gosh dang it, I mean, another night, and I'm tired. I've been working for 12 hours, and he just seems happy, just jumping around at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's nothing I can do to help it, right? And then I thought, he's not, he's making me suffer. So my vision of the situation is, why don't you just go to sleep? It feels like you're enjoying yourself, I thought myself, right? And then I'm here just tired, wanting to go to sleep, and you can't go to sleep. And then that perception just changed in a single moment. Because Eric, my boy, he was jumping around, and then he was running around, but there was a moment, and he's non-verbal, so just so you know, and to put you in the situation. But then suddenly he stops in front of me and starts jumping straight right in front of me, and all of a sudden his eyes connect to my eyes, and what I thought was a happy boy enjoying himself at the wrong hour of the day, suddenly his eyes were telling me, "Daddy, help me." And it was one of these eureka wow moments of, wow, it is something else of what I actually interpreted before. And I took him in my arms, put him on my lap, and sure enough, 2 seconds later, he went to sleep. So this depicts a little bit of the danger of trying to interpret reality through perception, which we mentioned before. And this moment changed completely the paradigm I had about the situation. So maybe some of you have a very formal definition of happiness, or maybe is casual, or is based on religion or your past experiences. But let me share what the APA, or the American Psychology Association, says about happiness. And it defines happiness as the emotion of joy, gladness, satisfaction, and well-being. And Oxford Languages defines it a little bit different, okay? It defines happiness as the state of being happy, which is kind of a switch from just the emotions into a state, rather than just a particular feeling in time. It's also a state of being happy. But if you go into the deeper meaning of what Oxford says happy is, right, and we go into how it defines happy, because if happiness is a state of being happy, happy is defined by them as a feeling or showing pleasure or contentment, which again, it takes you back to that feeling side of the definitions, right? So it's basing happiness on feelings, and I'm sure a lot of you may be relating to this definition as well. But even if you go into the root of the word happiness or happy, according to Oxford, it mentions that it's a derivative of the older adjective version of hap, which means lack or fortune. So it seems that if we go into the formal definition of happiness, happiness seems to be just a feeling that is based purely on the goddess of fortune, right? It depends on how the stars align, then we may be happy or not be happy. So since this conception of happiness is basing, or is making happiness dependent on outwards or external circumstances or factors, then it is very common that we dedicate a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of energy to modulate, to change our environment, to accommodate everything that surrounds us, even ourselves or our character, personality. We accommodate everything that we think that needs to happen based on the expectations that we've put on what happiness is for us and how we can achieve it. So if you're one of those, right, and again, I was one of those not too long ago, do you believe happiness is a feeling? I'm sure you're wondering, how can I have happiness if I'm tired all the time, or if I'm stressed at work all the time, or how can I have happiness if I cannot make it to the end of the month, or 1,000 other reasons that you can think of, right? And how can I have happiness if I'm sad? Or if I have happiness, does that mean that I always have to be happy? In Emotional Serenity, we understand that happiness is a permanent state of joy that is characterized by an independent state of self-awareness and peace. So those three key points, right? So joy, self-awareness, and peace. So this is what we understand that happiness is. And the reason, or the benefit of looking at happiness from this perspective is that now happiness, or our concept of happiness, is being freed from the external factors' influence. And it allows us to bring that or achieve that independence that we can achieve of having happiness from within. So rather than empowering external factors, now we're empowering ourselves from within to create or to define happiness from a known perspective way, rather from, not based on feelings, but rather based on the concept of happiness itself. So this is predicated on the basis that prejudice concedes or gives a particular value to different situations. You can have a value to one situation and a different value to another situation, and someone else could actually perceive the situation with a different value that you've given it. So this prejudice-based conception of our our circumstances or the value we give from our past experiences or our upbringing or whatever it is that has given us that prejudice on our paradigm is the very thing that is stopping you from being independently happy. So let me share three tools or concepts that will allow you or help you to come to the realization of this independent concept of happiness. The first one is recognizing that feelings, not the state of happiness, but feelings is just the outward manifestation of an inner thought or idea that is permeated in your paradigm, right? So for example, when you're treating an illness, for example, and sometimes the first thing that we notice is that we have a fever. Fever is comparative to the feeling, and the actual illness or the infection or the bacteria or the virus is the idea or thought behind that symptom. So feelings are somewhat of the symptoms of your own ideas. Secondly, is the recognition that situations or facts or whatever is happening, your conditions do not have an intrinsic value. The value that the conditions or situations have is the one that you give to it. And one extreme example of this is phobias, right? So for someone who is arachnophobic, a spider is something so terribly and scarily paralyzing that it provokes such a fear that, you know, some people really suffer physically and mentally from this, and it's just a concept, while there seems to be other people that love spiders, that, you know, play with them around and put them on their bodies. So spiders don't have an intrinsic value. It's whether you've given it a positive or negative value, or a threatening or non-threatening value, that will make the difference. So situations, conditions don't have an intrinsic value. And third, as Eckhart Tolle puts it in his book, The Power of the Now, we must live in the present. And he says that by living in the present, we avoid what he calls the anxiety gap, which is nothing more than being pulled apart by two different times. It's based on the concept that, as he mentions, we can only live, really or truly live. Our reality only exists in the present. We cannot live in the future or the past. So sometimes, for example, imagine that during this COVID season, you feel like your job is being threatened, but you still have a job today, right? And you start feeling anxious about losing your job today, even though you still have a job. But then that will be a potential future situation that doesn't even have to happen. You don't know for sure that it's going to happen, even if there are large probabilities that it will happen, but you feel anxious now about something that hasn't happened yet in the future, and this is what he calls the anxiety gap. So recapitulating is one, recognizing what feelings are, which is just the symptoms of the ideas. Two, recognizing that our circumstances and conditions don't have an intrinsic value other than the value that we want to give to them. And three, that we must live in the present. So we will expand on each of these concepts and tools further on the series of videos on happiness. Please feel free to comment and leave your questions. And if you have a suggestion on a topic or question that you want to discuss, please share with us. And thank you for being with us.